From the American Museum of Natural History in New York City and beaming out across all of space and time, this is Star Talk, where science and pop culture collide. I'm your host, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm an astrophysicist right here at this museum, where I also serve as director of the Hayden Planetarium. And I'm going to first introduce my co-host, Leanne Lord, professional comedian.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you.
No stranger to Star Talk?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, today I want to talk a little bit about Star Trek. Well, you know who we're featuring my interview? George Takei.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
And I know some Star Trek stuff, and not like what you do.
Well, no,
but I
no.
also sometimes I got to reach for my homie on this. Okay, I've got a friend and a colleague.
Okay.
Who knows everything about everything that's not otherwise astrophysics, but he's also an astrophysicist.
Nice.
He's my go-to man for all these kinds of occasions. Give me some love for Professor Charles Liu. Charles Liu. There he goes.
Hi.
He's a professor of astronomy and physics at College of Staten Island, the CUNY system.
Yes, Neil, you have only the slightest inkling of how happy I am to be here today.
Well, look,
George Takei is the man.
Yeah.
he's the man.
He
Yes.
is the man.
The man. I remember looking at all of these things that they had, the replicator and this thing that heated food fast, and cards that they put in machines that had data on it. And I was thinking how impossibly far in the future that was. And I wanted to just wanted to sort of chill with George Takei and just get his reaction to the stuff that came true.
We're putting a benchmark out in the future of what we could be doing. And that's a goal that we can reach today with our technicians, our researchers, our scientists, our innovators.
This is the 1960s. We are going to the moon. And we know we're going to the moon.
That's right.
So no one is thinking that anything is impossible.
And 3 years later, we did in 1969. Yeah. You know, and beyond that, we had this amazing device that was attached to our hip, and we would walk around with it all the time. And whenever we wanted to talk to someone, we'd rip it off, flip it open, and start talking. At that time, it was an astounding piece of technology. Today, we've gone way past that.
Even past it.
So, you know, what's science fiction? Science fiction serves a good purpose because it sets those goals, those benchmarks out in nowhere. And we work toward that. And then now we surpass that because that communicator that we had, now we watch movies on it, we listen to music.
Yeah, none of us
messages.
would want the Star Trek communicator because we had some better stuff.
Absolutely. I only pray for the early invention of the transporter, when we can just sparkle and pop out.
That's a little scary to me, but so
Well, it was scary to McCoy as well.
So they were a little afraid of the transporter. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, McCoy was, absolutely.
Yeah,
McCoy
I would not want to be the first one in the transporter.
Oh, well, I didn't say first.
And Gizmodo published an article in 2013 estimating how expensive it would be to build the Enterprise today. And obviously we don't have all the technology, so you get our counterpart to that technology.
Okay.
So the engines, you put in some kind of engine fuel. For the weapons, you put in nuclear weapons.
Instead of phasers and photon torpedoes.
But yeah, you put lasers maybe. So they did this. The size, the scale, came up to $476 billion.
Oh, that's cheap. Let's do this.
Right. So you think, wait, that sounds like a lot, but actually, what do we spend on defense every year? It's hundreds of billions of dollars a year. So you're just talking about a year and a half of defense money, and we could get a Starship Enterprise.
Well, you also have to figure in that that's going to go over budget. It's going to double. I'm just saying. And you didn't even talk about 10 Forward. You got to put in a little nightclub.
All the rest.
That's
And
what-
nowadays, you got to put in the holodeck. We've been featuring my interview with George Takei, Sulu, on Star Trek. Star Trek had some science in it, I thought, or
Just
some
a bit.
science that had yet to come that we have now, and some other science we know we ain't never getting, right? Like, I like the warp drive. Who doesn't like the warp drive?
Who doesn't like the warp
Now,
drive?
let me confess publicly right now. I have described the warp drive incorrectly in my past.
That's it. I'm sorry.
I can't work under
okay.
these conditions.
Okay. When I first knew of the warp drive from the original series, I'm thinking, well, they're warping space, just like I would fold this piece of paper. Just
No.
like if you're trying to get across the galaxy, which is 100,000 light years across, if it's the Milky Way, and so you warp the space like that.
That
right?
is so wrong.
But
Neil. You
beg
wrap the
forgiveness.
Enterprise in a subspace field, and then you send it faster than
Let me
light.
finish how wrong I was. So you'd warp the space, and then you travel through a little wormhole across, and then you unfold it, and then you get across the galaxy during the TV commercial, and it wouldn't take 100,000 years. So people must have been timid because I was saying that for years until I was at Comic-Con and some Star Trek people met me in an alley, and they
I can see it.
and they had what's the
Batleth?
What's that weapon that
The Batleth.
Batleth.
Yeah.
Batleth's the big one. The Mechleth is a little one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
tell me how the warp drive works.
What happens is that the warp nacelles create a subspace field around the ship, which allows it then to slide through ordinary space faster than light. Okay, so the warp factors is how fast you're able to slide through this subspace stuff.
So what are they warping?
It's a complete fabrication.
George Takei, in my interview, asked me about the plausibility of wormholes. So I like seeing this curiosity in folks. So let's check it out.
What is your thought on wormholes?
Wormholes, we're not going anywhere without them.
Well, we haven't been there yet.
Forget that we don't know how to make one yet. I mean, we know on paper we can do it, but not physically.
And on movies, too.
And in movies,
Interstellar.
we're really good in movies.
Matthew
We're doing it.
McConaughey.
Exactly.
And it was a stunning.
So forget that we don't know how to make one, or we don't have the command over space, time, matter, and energy yet to make one.
And do you think we will eventually?
I don't see why not.
As the communicator became so many other things?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Because what you want to do is be able to control the fabric of space and time. With matter and energy curve the fabric of space and time. Einstein tells us, and we can experimentally verify that that happens. So right now, how much energy do we command? Not that much. How much mass can we manipulate? Not that much. We're not there yet. But the day we can summon the energy of a galaxy, the mass of all the stars in the supercluster, we can then tune it to bend space this way, that way, pry open, and use it almost as space-time sculptors.
How many lifetimes, though, before we get to that point?
I don't know if it's farther away than someone in 1900 saying, oh, we'll never get to the moon. And then 69 years later, we're leaving boot prints. It's hard for me to assess how far away it is. For me, the most important moment recreated in the later generation movies in the Star Trek series was when they went back to the guy who invented the warp drive. The warp drive is essentially manipulating the fabric of space and time. Without that, we're really not going anywhere. Even if you could go the speed of light, it's still 100,000 light years across the galaxy. And you gotta really start folding space. And so I can imagine manipulating matter, energy, putting curved pockets within the fabric of space between you and your destination. And then the universe becomes a wormhole Swiss cheese set of highways. And then you go wherever you want and arrive instantaneously.
I do believe, because of our genius, that fiction can become fact.
Generally, when I have sort of people who are best known for acting and other, maybe they don't spend much time with scientists, so I try to give them a chance to sort of ask any questions that might be lingering within them, especially of the universe, because there aren't that many astrophysicists in the world. So we closed out the interview. I just asked, you got any questions you got for me?
What are some of the achievable things in my life?
I want to think that by the time you're 90, so next decade and a half, we will know whether or not there's life elsewhere in our solar system. Whether there's life somewhere in the soils of Mars, deep down. where NASA's mantra is follow the water. Because anywhere on Earth,
And that's the exciting thing that's been found.
and that's a completely reasonable thing. One of the most famous Star Trek episodes was the one with the Horta, which is life not based on carbon, based on silicon. And that silicon wasn't pulled out of the ether. Silicon appears directly below carbon on the periodic table. And all the elements that line up above and below one another on the periodic table of elements, they all form the same families of molecules. So if carbon can make life in all of its varied molecules, the suspicion was maybe silicon can just be swapped in for it. They have silicon-based life instead of carbon-based life. So that episode with the Horta was deeper than I think people noticed at the time. Only later would we be searching for life and having to ask, what should we look for? Should we look for ourselves? Carbon-based life, silicon-based life, or some kind of life that we have yet to dream of, energy-based life? So it's one of the challenges. We know life does exist based on water, so we can start there, but we should not be too blinded by that, because nature might be cleverer than we are.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, here you took a fictional story.
Yes.
The Horta, fictional creation. And there's a real possibility. You know, when I was a kid.
It's got people thinking. If it gets you thinking, there it is.
Absolutely. Again, you know, you have that benchmark that's unimagined,
Yes.
or imagined, but
Right.
way up.
Just
way
out
up.
of reach, but you can
Right.
you can create the path there.
And then we start putting the bricks together.
Yeah.
This chunk of information, that chunk of information.
Right.
You know, when I was a kid, I was thrilled when I went to see a movie titled Destination Moon.
Oh.
And now we have our surrogate on Mars,
Yes.
roaming around, sending back information like the ones with which we now speculate on what might be up there.